Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into the Volquest podcast. I am Eric Kane with Brent Hubbs, Rob Lewis, and Austin Price. Our presenting sponsor of the show is Exterior Home Solutions, 865-524-5888, online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. They've been local, they've been trusted since 1999 for roofing, siding, garage, decking, whatever the case may be. Contact Exterior Home Solutions today, and they can help you out. A lot to get into here on this edition of the Volquest podcast. We'll get into recruiting in the back half of the show. We'll look around the SEC a little bit, but lo and behold, hey, second bye week of the year. Tennessee 6-1, 3-1 in Southeastern Conference play, and Brent Hubbs firmly entrenched in the college football playoff conversation. It's going to be hard to be disappointed where you're at this point in the season, heading into the second bye week.
Well, I mean, you're gonna be disappointed because you gave a game away at Arkansas that you felt like you should have won, and you just didn't play well. But yeah, I mean, we talked about it all off season. Tennessee had to be at worst a one-loss team going into the second bye, and that's exactly where you are. You're in the conversation now. What you have to do, and Josh Heupel talked about this in his post-game press conference. You got to try to put some blinders on and keep it about you, and not get caught up in everything that's going on. This is going to be a wild 6 or 7 weeks, guys. I mean, if you think about it. I mean, Rob, think of it this way. One, there's going to be a daily story written by every national outlet about who's in and who's out, right? They're going to carve up your resume. They're going to pick everything apart. They're going to tear it to shreds and all those things. On top of that, you got a bunch of people pulling at kids who are talking about transfer portal stuff. Like, hey, you sure you want to be there? You're not playing a whole lot. What are they doing? You know, where do you factor in all those things? We've got coaching changes going on. And all the while, you need to play your best football the last 6 or 7 weeks of the football season here to try to be in the playoff in December. The challenge for coaches is going to be really unique, I think, over the course of the next 6 or 7 weeks, because this is, for all that's on the line, and we haven't been through this before, Rob, there is more distraction potentially in front of you than you've ever seen in the month of the end of October and certainly in the month of November.
Oh, it's wild. What's wild about it? It's all brand new. I mean, maybe 5 years from now, maybe it won't be. But I mean, it's brand new for all the the players and coaches going through it. It's brand new for the fans, experiencing it. It's it's as big and wild and crazy, I think, as anybody could have predicted when this was all coming together. And we talked about the quote unquote NFL model a lot as it pertains to going undefeated in the SEC and with the grind and the addition of Texas and Oklahoma. I think, Hubbard, what you're talking about is a little bit of the NFL mindset when you get to this point in the season. I mean, you got to stay focused and the outside distractions. I mean, whether you like it or not. I mean, the fact that money comes into it with the NIL and the way contracts are. I mean, how do you feel if you're an NFL player and your team's going nowhere, but yeah, you're still getting paid? I mean, ditto if you're a 19-year-old kid. I mean, it's a whole different ball game, but experiencing kind of the same thing. So it's wild. I mean, it's new and different for everybody. It's like March Madness multiplied by 50. I think when you talk about all the speculation and the how it fuels this whole machine that's just going to be talking about it for the next 2 months.
Austin, you look at Tennessee's win over Alabama, 24-17. Of course, we were all there. We talked about it all Sunday and Monday, but it was a game where Tennessee's defense was once again elite. Tennessee's defense kept the Volunteers in this game the entire time, made some critical stops under the goal line takeaway, and it just kind of was treading water there, allowing the offense to finally get in the game for the third straight week. Unfortunately, Tennessee's offense shut out in the first half. But Dylan Sampson, Nico made some great throws in the second half. For as off as he was in the receiving game in general in the first half, he made some big boy throws there in the second half. Dylan Sampson came around, and Tennessee did what it needed to do to pick up a huge win at home. Anytime you beat Alabama, that's a big win and kind of puts you in this conversation that we're talking about being a one-loss team heading into the second bye. It was a really, really nice win for Tennessee. You got a lot of things to get better at, don't get me wrong, and I think it's encouraging, Austin, that you can be so much better offensively, right? You can be so much better, yet you're pretty daggone good right now overall.
We've said it the last, I would say like 6 weeks, like even before Tennessee kind of went, into a little bit of the lull on offense, like even when they were just kind of playing good, not great, like if Tennessee ever finds their footing on offense, then watch out. And I mean, the one positive I think you take out of Saturday night is like Hubs, when was the last time Tennessee had that many players running wide open? Now, Nico's got to figure out a way to dial it back, the getting amped up, overthrows or missing high. But if he starts connecting and they're able to keep having guys run that open, all of a sudden it does look a lot like 22. Because they missed multiple shots the other night, against Alabama, where wide receivers were just running scot-free.
Yeah, that's an Alabama secondary that's got a lot of issues, and obviously, and Tennessee was trying to take advantage of it, and they couldn't take advantage of it. But you're right; it's not just the Alabama game, and I think that's the point you're making. You look at the last 2 weeks that they've had. I mean, Chaz Nimrod in the Florida game's 5 yards behind somebody, and you just airmailed that throw. I don't know. I mean, it was still landed out of bounds, right? I mean, you had Chris Brazzell in the Florida game. You didn't give him enough room to get a foot down, and then you go look at. I mean, you had McCoy in the seam. You had Brazzell open again a couple of times in this game. Squirrel White's open. I mean, you had, and this is not, I don't want to sound like a coach out there, but literally this team should have scored 40 points on Saturday against Alabama when you look at what was just available to them just in big plays. I don't mean driving the football down the field. I mean just in making 2 or 3 big plays, there's 21 more points out there available. So that is encouraging. What you hope is that the quarterback, Eric and Rob, found his footing a little bit in the second half, and there's some real carryover of that through the open date. We're not going to know till they play Kentucky, but you hope that he did find something, and find his footing and maybe settle down a little bit in that second half.
Rob, what do you think? You think Nico grew up there in that second half? Because, to the guy's point, I mean, he overshot a couple left points off the board, and his receivers as well dropped some too. I mean, the whole passing game was out of sync. But, that throw in the second half, we continue to reference it. Of course, the touchdown to Brazzell was just a dime. The straight rollout, sprint out to the sideline, throwing on the run to Thornton. What a throw. It looked like he grew up a little bit, and you hope that you can carry some of that into the last stretch of the regular season.
I mean, I think he definitely grew up in terms of, handling the environment, handling being down and your offense, not clicking. And, as Coach Heupel, talks about, having competitive composure, moving on to the next play. Now, what I don't know, does that growing up lead to, him suddenly becoming more efficient and, hitting these guys that Hubbard's talking about running open? I mean, I don't know exactly how it manifests itself. You talk about translating, but yeah, I don't see how you go through that moment like you did, score 24 points in the second half of, a pressure cooker in a rivalry game and not, grow up from the experience. But again, I mean, he'll be a more mature quarterback. I mean, I don't think he'll let, he won't be as effective, but, still that was at home. And that's, growing up, what does that mean exactly, Eric? I guess, a long way of getting to my point, but I don't know if that means he's suddenly going to be hitting 70% of his passes like everybody wants to see.
Yeah, I think, and I wonder a little bit, Austin, with Nico, if it was, and it's no excuse making, but it was so easy so early for him out of the gate, right? Like Iowa wasn't a challenge. Okay, they won that one easily. All right, we got your offseason. They had a good offseason. Then you play those, you play Chattanooga, and that's for a quarter and a half. That was 7-on-7 or routes.
314 yards passing in a quarter and a half.
Yeah, I mean, it was routes versus airs, what that was. So you go to then here's the big test, right? He's got to go to NC State. Well, then NC State didn't even challenge him because they just played that back coverage, and Tennessee just ran the football down their throat. Kent State doesn't really count, but he plays pretty well against Oklahoma, and you think, okay, there it is. And then it got a little bit. Adversity hit him a little bit, and you wonder if he sort of played through, that here the last couple of weeks, and maybe he can build on it. I mean, there's no way to predict. I mean, you can't sit here and say it's not going to translate into big time success moving forward, but you can't sit here and say it's absolutely going to because he threw 2 dimes in the second half that they gave you the opportunity to win the football game.
Yeah, I mean, like all the praise that he got probably wasn't warranted to begin with. I mean, because of the competition, but this is a kid that still. I mean, he made 2 throws Saturday that you're just like, I mean, if you can't see the upside there, I can't help you. Like it just just dimes.
The
and again,
hype is because of those two throws.
yeah,
right?
100%. And again, can he be better? Absolutely. And his performance is masked by the fact that Tennessee was able to come back. The defense did what they do. Nico did make some plays. Dylan Sampson did what he does, which is, I guess run for, 80% of his yards in the second half and, get a couple of scores. And Tennessee found a way. But this is an opportunity for him to take a leap, to take a jump. He's got 2 weeks to continue to get better. And you'd have to think that the receivers that have kind of been nicked up and dinged up will do nothing between now and Kentucky, and hopefully, that will help that group. So, I mean, Nico is going to flash. He's going to make some throws and plays, but I mean, again, he's going to have those moments right now, and I think everybody just knows you have to play through them, because what you're hoping is next time out the number of misses is down, the number of hits is up. And again, when you start doing that more and more with the way this defense is playing, watch out when you're playing somebody else.
Yeah, I think the other thing too for me as I continue to watch and look, I mean, we're going to pick. You're going to always pick the quarterback apart. You're going to pick everything that's amiss there apart. The thing that I continue to be impressed with as I look back at where Tennessee was, how good Hendon Hooker was in 22. And I think that created this standard that this thing is for quarterbacks is a bunch of layups in this offense, right? He just in that year did not miss any. He just did not miss the easy ones vertically down the field. If a guy was 5 yards open, I mean, you can't think of a handful of overthrows he had in that year. And I think while that's a great standard, that's probably unrealistic. I mean, I think he had an unbelievable year playing football for Tennessee in his second year in this system. And I think Nico's going to be a really good player. The upside's obviously there with everything that he can do. But I think the expectations that Hendon Hooker created for this offense with quarterback play is going to be a hard standard to consistently follow up, because he was terrific in 22.
I will say, got to give a lot of credit as much as me and others, kind of, piled on some of the offensive line struggles the last few weeks. They gave him ample time Saturday. They did a really nice job of protecting him. And the few times that, they were able to really get in there on him, he was able to do something with his legs, whether it was just a simple rollout and run out of bounds after 5 or 6, or that huge run there on Tennessee's first touchdown drive. Credit Tennessee's offensive line. I thought they did a really, really a much better job this past game.
Yeah, and I think the interception, right? I mean, he had all day to throw.
Yeah, correct. That's right.
Like all day, and then he just held on to it, and then of course he should have threw it away when he was out of the pocket. Rob, a huge question for Tennessee's defense, and obviously Tennessee's defense played so well, was how are you going to overcompensate for the loss of Keenan Peely? Jeremiah Thielander moves in there to that Mike spot. Arian Carter's all over the field playing so many snaps. Caleb Perry's in there in the 4-3, and of course he's your kind of key backup now. Jalen Smith got a lot of run. Of course, we know Edwin Spillman still remains out. How do you think that group overall played against Alabama? And then something Brent brought up on the rewind a couple nights ago, this bye week's got to be an opportunity for Jalen Smith to continue to come on, because Jalen Smith is going to play snaps for you moving forward. He's got to. Tennessee's thin at linebacker.
I mean, I thought that group played great, and I'm not going to try to pretend I spent Sunday afternoon breaking down the all-22 film. Here's all the evidence I needed. Brandon Milroe, 11 yards rushing. I mean, that if you'd have told me Tennessee was going to hold him to that before the game, I would have thought that was going to be a great game for the defense, or he got hurt in the first quarter. I mean, some of that was sack yardage, but only I think Alabama had 19 yards and lost yardage and sacks. So it wasn't like Tennessee got him for a 20-yard loss that affected his total, like you'll see. And it wasn't all the linebackers, but those guys stayed home. They tackled well. They didn't let Milroe get into open space. And some of that was certainly his safeties. I remember Will Brooks had one shoestring early that might have saved a 70-yard touchdown. But you just look at Milroe's stat line, and obviously a lot of guys played well. But we talked about it last week. Before the game that the linebackers are really going to be stressed because of what Milroe could do with his feet, how he could extend plays, and I thought they did a great job. You didn't see him get picked on overly much in the middle of the field, like it's happened a lot in the past. Just with the numbers that Alabama had, 75 yards rushing. I mean, a lot of stats point to those guys having a great day, and to do that without Keenan Peely, way better than I would have anticipated, because I thought he was going to be I thought the loss was going to be a significant blow. Like there would be an obvious drop off, and there was not.
Austin, I still am just so impressed by Tennessee's corners, and I know we got to move on. I want to look at the SEC a little bit before we talk a little recruiting, but Ricky Gibson, I thought overall was solid, but of course they targeted him. They tried to pick on him a little bit, especially when Jamal McCoy was out of the game. But he was targeted 11 times. He gave up 6 receptions, had that touchdown, 77 yards. Jamal McCoy targeted 11 times, gave up 5 receptions, 44 yards, 15 yards after the catch, 23 for Ricky Gibson. McCoy, of course, made just a beautiful interception, reading through Ryan Williams to the quarterback to make a play on the ball. Tennessee's corners are good, and Jalen McMurray came in a big time spot, and of course he wasn't lost. I think Tennessee's corners leading the way in that secondary, and of course I thought the safeties played much better in this football game. We talked about Will Brooks, but I thought Andre Turrentine had a really rough day against Florida. I thought he played better in this football game.
He did. I had a buddy message me last week. He was like, I just still can't believe Willie Martinez is coaching DBs. And I'm like, have you watched Tennessee's DBs this year? Like, Tennessee's DBs are a strength. They are, again, where's my boom? I'm going to beat that drum. Like, best combination of DBs Tennessee's had at least since, the Jason Allen group. They're just good, and they're long, and they play physical, and they are in the receiver's, grill. The receiver may make catches, but they make contested catches. Like, it's not just like, I'm going to run this route and then I'm going to give you, 3 or 4 yards, and then I'll just kind of,
There were a couple of times Ricky Gibson gave up a reception. I'm like, how? He's all over the guy.
Yeah. So, Tennessee's DBs, man, they just continue to play really, really good football. I'm excited. I'm sitting down with those guys this week for a Vol Club Confidential and the duo. And you're right. Hubs pointed out after the game, like when Jermod McCoy went out, when he got kneed in the back, they went right at Ricky. And, Ricky probably did get away with a little tug there.
Handsy. Got a little handsy.
But guess what? James Pierce got held in the end zone in what should have been a safety. It wasn't called. That's sports. Like, all the time there's no calls. Play. Yeah. So, but yeah, I just think Tennessee's corners are fantastic. I really do. And Boo continues to, play really well. He's in good position. He knows how to draw those 15-yard penalties without getting one on himself. This Tennessee secondary is playing really well, and a lot. And you say that that's in part defensive line, but it's also in part Jimmy's and Joe's, because they've got some guys that have no conscience, and they, if they get beat, they don't. It's okay. They get up and play the next play.
Yeah, I don't think last year anybody gave enough credence to the loss of Kamal Hadden and what that meant to that secondary in terms of their production. They're healthy right now. They've improved. Jamal McCoy is a better player than Kamal Hadden was. Ricky Gibson's developed. They're a better group overall. But I think that group got a little slighted last year because they ended up, because of the injuries, they weren't as athletic out there as they needed to be. They have played really well this year. And I just, Rob, I really like the way that they approached everything with Boo Carter. Because, every preseason press conference that a defensive coach or the head coach spoke at, the first question was about Boo Carter. Was he going to start? Where's he going to start? And everything. And they played him, but they played him in a way to elevate him as he's going along. And the results that they're getting out of that now, he's played his best 2 football games back to back. They have built him slowly through a regular rotation, and they're reaping the benefits of that. So their development back there with those guys has been really good, the way they've handled them this year.
Yeah, and Boo's making big plays too. It's not just like he's, you look, he's got 5 tackles, or you don't remember him. He's making, tackles behind the line of scrimmage. He's making, plays in the open field where, if he doesn't get it, it's a chunk play. And to your point about the defensive backs, if you told me before the game that Ryan Williams' longest catch was going to be for 16 yards, I would, as a Tennessee fan, sign me up for that. I thought that was a statement from this defensive back group, the way he is just, gash people, he and Milroe, and to limit him to where he didn't have a catch all day, 20 plus yards. that jumped out to me in the box score for sure.
Well, it's just shocking to me that he was targeted 19 times. Again, we continue to go back. That's Hendon Hooker, Cedric Tillman, Pittsburgh 2022-esque. 8 receptions, 19 targets. But overall, again, just bigger picture stuff, and I want to move on to the SEC. Tennessee didn't allow a third down conversion defensively from quarters 2, 3, and 4. Tennessee allowed a total of 3 yards to Alabama on their last 4 possessions. It's incredible. You talk about closing games out the right way. Tennessee's defense, Boo Carter, Jerome, all those guys, they closed the right way for sure.
I mean, look at the last 2 Alabama games. 2 years ago, defensively at the end, you had a walk-on and Will Wright out there playing key snaps, balls thrown at him and all that. And then a walk-on and Will Brooks closes the game out, against Alabama. Just, I don't know. It's just interesting, man. Tennessee's not only getting good play out of their scholarship guys, they're getting quality production out of walk-ons, whether that's Deshaun Bishop or, Will Brooks, or 2 years ago, Will Wright. Guys are, when they get put in a, kind of a situation that's probably too big for most, it's not too big for them.
Tennessee defeats Alabama on the 3rd Saturday in October, 24-17. And, of course, a big-time win heading into the second bye week of the regular season. Elsewhere around the SEC this past weekend, Texas tried to come back a little bit there against Georgia, fell short 30-15. Brent, that's a game where we were all kind of watching saying, hey, you need Texas to win this game. Of course, it's not detrimental, but Tennessee fans were hoping Texas would have won that game. It did not, so it's got 1 loss now, and Georgia's kind of back to being who Georgia was, at least in the national media's eyes.
Yeah, no doubt. They're going to be right there, and that was a classic Kirby Smart game. When everybody's doubting you. I mean, listen, Kirby Smart, you could be a 7-touchdown favorite, and somehow they're disrespected somewhere. So this was the easiest motivation tactic that Kirby Smart had. He clearly played it up. You heard it in his post-game interview with ESPN about how nobody gave him a chance and all those types of things. So that was a classic, Kirby Smart setup. And I tell you what, we talk about, players and the challenges that you have to have some blinders on. This is a big week coming up in the SEC as well. I mean, because now you're talking about I thought a 2-loss team in the SEC would be, I don't say a lot, but would be in great shape to be in the playoff. But there's certainly some opportunities now that 2-loss teams are going to be on the outside looking in. And so now you are scoreboard watching a little bit, right? And so Missouri and Alabama is huge. LSU and Texas A&M is a massive, massive game for college football playoff implications. So it's for fans, it's going to be a blast because now, while you got all your honeydews to do this week, you're finding the TV because suddenly that game means a lot to you because your team's still in the hunt. And that's going to be the fun part of this down the stretch, but it's also going to be the nerve-wracking deal because it's going to be a new scenario every hour, essentially, on Saturday.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you, if you're a Tennessee fan, the team that you probably don't want to root for between now and the house is South Carolina because South Carolina plays Texas A&M at home. They play Missouri. I'm pretty sure that one is at home. And again, Missouri could end up getting their second loss, and they'll be eliminated if they lose Saturday to Alabama. I think this is Milroe's last stand, by the way. If he doesn't win this week, they'll make the move and go to Ty Simpson after this week. Because that would give him 3 losses, and there's no reason to stick with him when the offense is not, it's just big play or nothing. But I'm with you, Hubbard. I mean, you're going to start watching some scoreboards. I do think some of it's going to take care of itself, though.
Well, sure, it has to because
to a degree.
LSU and Texas A&M that's I wouldn't call that an elimination game, but that's I just think that there's a chance when you look at this league, and it's back to that NFL model that we're talking about. But you look at this league, and there's just going to be a lot of beating up on each other, and what does that look like with how the ACC plays out? What does that look like with how the Big Ten plays itself out? Here's Indiana sitting there. Is Indiana a playoff caliber team? Well, that's scheduled. They're going to have a great shot to run the table or at least be a 1-loss team. What does that do to a 2-loss SEC team? Now, that's going to be great conversation for everybody outside of a locker room. But the challenge for everybody inside the locker room is just to keep playing. Just play week to week. That's all you can control, and don't worry about what everybody's texting you and you're reading on the crawl at the bottom and everything else. But man, it's going to be wild.
Well,
Sure.
I think you can follow the polls a little bit. Not that they're just a clear cut and dry and determining factor, but I mean, I think if you kind of how this thing's going to play out will be a lot. If you look at the polls, Tennessee's 7 right now. Tennessee just wins the next 2 because of the games that are ahead of the schedule. They're likely to end up as a top 5 team when they go to Georgia, right? And so, at that point, if Tennessee's just even if they don't win, like let's just say that they played Georgia really close and tight in Athens and they lose by a score, they're not going to drop that far because by that point Georgia's 2 or 3, or depending on what happens between now and then, it could be number 1 again. So I think you just want to just do what you do. You're right. The best way to do it is just go win all the games and control it yourself. But I think that where you're at in the polls is going to and when you lose is going to really determine a lot in this thing, because you're right. Indiana's up there. They play Michigan. They get that one at home, which will be easier than going to the big house for the Hoosiers. But yeah, I mean, like Iowa State, BYU, these teams keep just kind of skating by. Iowa State comes back and beats UCF the other night. BYU, finds a way to beat Oklahoma State and steal that one the other night. Notre Dame's a fly in the ointment, but guess what? They got to play Army and Navy, 2 teams that are ranked right down there at the bottom along with Vanderbilt. Yeah. I mean, those are tough games for them.
I mean, look at the bottom half of the poll right there. I mean, who had in the preseason, who had Illinois, SMU, Army, Navy, Vanderbilt to close out the last 5 or 6 spots in the AP poll? Rob Lewis, did you have that on your bingo card?
I did not. And I mean, Illinois up there. I mean, you give them a shout out for what they've done, but no, it did not.
I was going to say, what's more surprising right now that Vanderbilt is 5-2, okay, and ranked in the top 25.
No, I don't know what.
There's no other option. There's no other option. There's no other option.
Oklahoma's 4-3.
Hear the other option.
And just fired their OC.
Do what?
I said, or Oklahoma's 4-3 and just fired their offensive coordinator, and they're just a complete disaster.
Still Vandy.
I
thought Oklahoma would struggle. I just thought that they weren't as built for the move right now as Texas was. Texas had kind of been building the last several years. I felt like Oklahoma was not there, ready for this move.
Well, and injuries have riddled them, and then they made the
quarterback
mistake at the quarterback position.
Yep, they let Dylan Gabriel go to Oregon and.
Well, and then they bailed on Jackson Arnold 4 games into the season, and they got caught up in a fourth quarter guy running around making a couple of plays
against Tennessee's 4th and 5th best linebackers, maybe 5th and 6th.
They had more linebackers that game, yeah.
Yeah, and he's going to go and do things, and he's a freshman, and he's played like it, and it's just, man, that situation's a mess for them. I mean, I will give – it tells you where Oklahoma is, but you do have to give Shane Beamer and South Carolina a little credit because, I mean, they took one on the chin to Ole Miss at home, played really poorly, squandered an opportunity at Alabama. So you thought, hey, here's the third one, right? Typically that third week after 2 really tough losses is hard, and they just went out there and Oklahoma had no fight in them. They just didn't have anything left in them at all. Now –
and they only got a tougher schedule from here to the house, man.
Yeah, they're not going to help you. They're not going to help eliminate any playoff teams down the stretch for you. I think the question is going to be, how does Texas handle the close here? Where does the grind catch up to them in any? That won't against Vanderbilt, I don't think, but in any way, shape, or form, how does the grind catch up to Texas?
But I mean, like their close is still not that hard. I mean, like it's I mean, I got A&M to close, but like. But it's Vanderbilt. And where's that game at? Is it at Vandy?
It's at Vandy, home Florida, at Arkansas, home Kentucky.
Florida playing a little better. I mean, how much? I mean, like they got a little. I mean, I get that Kentucky is not a great football team, but Kentucky's defense was supposedly just so good, right? I mean, they held Ole Miss, a vaunted offense, down. They held Georgia down, and then Florida goes for, without their starting running back, without their starting quarterback, they go for near 50. Like, I mean, that to me, that was a surprise from this past week. Not that they won the game, but how they won the game.
They're a little pesky. What did Lagway completed? 8 passes, but threw for
Almost 300
Yeah,
yards.
about 300 yards. Was that almost 40 yards of completion?
They need, by the way, Tennessee does need Arkansas to win. I know they didn't win this past week. They got handled by LSU pretty good in Fayetteville, but they need Arkansas to win a fair share down the stretch. So that loss isn't as glaring to when you start looking at resumes.
Yeah.
And I'll to add to Hubbard's point about South Carolina. I love taking shots at Shane Beamer for some of his histrionics. I tip of the cap to them. I thought they were, after the way they almost choked against Old Dominion, and then the debacle they had at home against LSU with missed calls, shot themselves in the foot. That's a gritty little football team.
Somebody asked us on the board at some point this weekend, and I just want you to answer it with one team. You don't have to go into explanation because we got to move on. Outside of Georgia, Tennessee's toughest opponent left on the schedule.
Vanderbilt. It's going to be Vanderbilt's Super Bowl. I just don't think it's close. I think Vanderbilt is way better than Kentucky or Mississippi State.
Okay. Vanderbilt. Here we are. The number 25 Commodores at home. It'll be more of a home game for Tennessee. I don't care how good Vanderbilt is. All right. We're going to get into some recruiting tidbits. A lot of good stuff here from this past weekend. And Austin Price and Matt Ray have been all over it. So we're going to get into that as we continue on here with the Tuesday morning edition of the Volquest podcast. But first, let's get a word from our proud presenting sponsors from Exterior Home Solutions.
Hey, Sterling, man, come on. We got a roof to replace.
Let's go, baby. It's
Go!
game time. Let's go.
Hey, Sterl, you ready to go to the top?
Man, I can't believe you guys been doing this for 25 years. Oh, baby.
Now, this is what I call a rooftop party.
We have 25 years experience in roofing and exterior renovations, and we're backed by the best.
Are you ready to get your rooftop party started? Give us a call, 865-524-5888.
That phone number for Exterior Home Solutions, again at 865-524-5888, online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Local and trusted since 1999. Big thanks to our presenting sponsors, that is Exterior Home Solutions. Austin Price, on Monday, Tyson Bacon committed to the University of Tennessee, a guy they really like and covet in the 2026 class on the defensive line. Why now, and what is Tennessee getting in the 2026 defensive lineman, Tyson Bacon?
Yeah, kid originally, from Detroit or thereabouts. Just a kid, moved down here, play some better competition, plays at Hoover. Big, I think, kind of burly defensive lineman who's only going to get bigger, and a really intelligent kid, man. I really enjoyed talking to him. Just seems like a fantastic young man and a kid that, understands, what it takes to be a good player. We'll see if he can get there, but you can't teach measurables. And, I think the kid is going to continue to get more and more run. I mean, you saw him, Brandon Anderson, who we'll talk about in a minute. They both have started to really get a lot of traction out there with offers, just all the attention. And Tyson's had a really good, strong start to his junior year and has been impressive there for Hoover. So a kid that, I think can, be a force on the defensive line at the next level.
So you had Tyson Bacon here on Monday, and then you brought up Brandon Anderson, a guy that Tennessee covets, offensive lineman, same class. He was in on campus, and he jumped in the boat on Sunday afternoon. What is Tennessee getting in Brandon Anderson? And then overall, it's pretty nice little start here for the 26 class.
Yeah, it is a nice start. I mean, obviously, you started it off with the best way you can start it off, and that's your quarterback and the number one player in the country. It only goes downhill when you land the top player in the country in that class. But yeah, Brandon Anderson, again, Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, all those schools have made a huge push here for the linemen there from North Cobb, and wanted to get into town, wanted to tell the staff in person, did so, and then went Sunday morning, and really quick. And Matt Ray had you fully covered on that one. Talked about both he and just what he brings to the table in the war room, and then obviously had you covered as soon as the kid committed with impact analysis. But Tennessee, wanted to add to the offensive line. Tennessee needs to go more heavily on the interior, with this next class. And so, getting a good start there. Now, Brandon, I think, could play, maybe some right tackle. He's got some versatility to him. He is long. But I think most people project him as an interior guy down the road.
Austin, it's it's kind of like we've seen this story before, right? And what I mean by that is 2022, huge win over your rival Florida, great environment. 2022, massive win over Alabama, huge environment, fireworks, field storming. Like, those are the conversations that we've had with recruits over the years saying, oh man, I was at that Alabama game. Wow, what a scene, what an environment. You did it in a different way in 2024, but you did the same thing. You beat Florida, you beat Alabama. The environment was crazy. I mean, how much has the last 2 weekends helped in these 26s, 27s who maybe saw Neyland for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you can have a fantastic environment, and I thought Florida was really good, but I thought Saturday was fantastic.
Yeah.
I think anytime you can have, those type of environments, it leaves an impression on kids. I mean, look at Isaiah Campbell. Could Isaiah Campbell pick North Carolina or decide to get back in the boat with Clemson? Sure. But I can promise you, when Isaiah Campbell goes to North Carolina for that visit, that's going to be like going to a church service compared to what he dealt with on Saturday. It's just going to be different. And, that stuff sticks with kids. Like when you get over there and there's such a stark contrast between the environment in Neyland and the environment somewhere else. It stands out to kids. It stands out to families. So it's a big deal. And then, of course, you got the cigars and the celebration afterwards and, just the scene in the locker room, all that stuff, leaves an indelible impression.
And it doesn't hurt when AP. It doesn't hurt when you win these games, does it?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, when you win them, it just makes it even better. I think for Tennessee, obviously you'd love to be undefeated right now, but as far as, these last 2 games, your 2 big recruiting weekends, they could not have been better for you, both 26 and 27 and even some 25s.
So what's next? You had a month that you were away from Neyland Stadium, and you were just hoping and hoping and hoping to get a home game, right? And you've been back 2 incredible weekends. Now you have an off week, but you do have 2 weekends coming up. So kind of set the scene here for the next couple of weeks of Tennessee recruiting before you're back on the road in Athens.
Well, for the Kentucky game, Tennessee has to self-impose an SEC game each year. So the Mississippi State game will be that, they won't have recruits at that game. But for the Kentucky game, I would expect Tennessee to try to get as many commits back in here as possible. I know Faison Brandon's coming back in town. Will they be able to get another player or 2 in town? Can they, convince a running back? Can they get, they continue to work on DeJuan Morris? Does he give them an actual look, for the Kentucky game? Maybe. I think that honestly that would be best case scenario for him, because for a kid that felt slighted because Tennessee wanted a bigger back, and then when Tennessee pivoted to him, he just didn't do a whole lot with him. If you could get him in here, all the attention would be on him. Whereas like at the Alabama game, there's so many people here and so many recruits here and different classes that coaches are pulling 100 different directions. I think it might actually be good if he's here for what will be the dark mode game against Kentucky. We'll see if it happens. We'll see again. Tennessee's continue to try to shoot their shot there. He's not been very responsive, but you never know.
Well, and I think both sides have to be mature in that situation, right? You got to get past whatever over the last 6 months.
Yes.
You didn't want me. You didn't take our calls, whatever. I mean, like, it's about the player. If you need a back and you want a back and you like a back, everybody just say, hey, all right, the last 6 months was tough. All right, it didn't go exactly the way we want, but you're a priority for us. We've tried to tell you that. Get over here. Let's take a look at this thing and go from there. We'll see if it happens. But I think both sides have to just kind of bury whatever quote hatchet there is between whatever happened 6 months ago.
If you look at DeJuan Morris, he should be willing to give Tennessee a listen and a look for 2 reasons. One, USC is a train wreck, and 2, if you can't look at Dylan Sampson, someone who's about your size, and not go, man, you know what? Look at what they're doing with that guy. We're very similar body types. And I'm an in-state kid. Like, I'm just saying, like, there's multiple reasons that the USC commit DeJuan Morris out of Oakland should be at least giving Tennessee a look at some point between here and signing day.
Yeah, I don't disagree because you got no idea what's going to happen at SC. I mean, the rumors there are going to start to swirl, and some of it's going to be NFL rumors, right?
Yep,
I mean,
that's absolutely right.
I think there's a lot of people in the college football world who think there's going to be a coach or two that are not at retirement age, like we saw with Bennett at Virginia and some other people like that. But there's some people that are going to go, you know what? I don't like the direction where we're going in college, so I'm going to take, quote, a pay cut, and I'll go call plays in the NFL. I'll go be an NFL coordinator and not have to worry about guys coming into my office in November in the middle of a playoff run, potential playoff run, saying, I need this, I want that, or I'm leaving, or this, that, or the other. Maybe it's just easier to take less money and just go call ball plays. I think there's a notion that some people think that you may see that happen in the college game. Not necessarily an established winner who's just going to walk away from a winner, but a guy who's in trouble, who's not going to necessarily look for another college job. He may give the NFL a legitimate look. You know, if you're DeJuan Morris and you're 3 time zones away or 2 time zones away, I got to know my geography, so it's only 2 time zones, by the way, because he's an mid-state kid. Why would you not, right? You're exactly right, Austin. I mean, what in the world would you not take a look at Tennessee at this point with where everything's at with Southern Cal?
Plus all that travel, right? I mean, with the realignment, I mean, I know that's a broken record, but I mean, gosh, that's a hard life for a student athlete.
There's no way I'd want to go to the Big Ten with all that nonsense.
I mean,
like if I'm going to the Big Ten, I'm going to somewhere that's regionally. Like if I'm DeJuan Morris, I'm going to Ohio State or Michigan or someplace. I'm not going to USC and then being back and forth all over the country.
Oh, USC's been to Michigan, Minnesota, and Maryland. Just in the last month or there's 6 weeks. I mean, that's brutal. And Minnesota and Maryland back to back, if I'm not mistaken, at least 2 of the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. It is a tough sled. I mean, it's hard.
You were talking about coaches, and I know we're onto a bigger subject there, but I mean, look at Chip Kelly. He didn't go to the NFL, but he gave up being a head coach. Just go call plays, and he's still in the college realm, so it's not the same. But the head, I forgot his name, head coach of Boston College. He's now DC at Green Bay. Like, just tired of it, right? And so, I mean, I'm with you, man. I think Lincoln Riley 100% is going to be in the NFL. I can see that for Lane Kiffin in the future, maybe. I mean, why deal with all this stuff?
USC's 3-4, and one of those 3 wins is a win over LSU. You know what I'm saying? And that's why, like, the Arkansas game, while it probably reared its ugly head a couple of times more, like other teams that are comparable to Tennessee in the mix are going to have some head scratching losses too. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, like Rutgers is at USC this weekend. Not that we're going to bring it up, but I mean, like, they've got a couple more losses definitely in them. And how bad was Nebraska for all that hoopla early in the season? Like, how bad were they at Indiana the other day?
Lane egg.
AP, you better be careful. That might get cut out of this show.
Megan behind the
see
scenes
how bad
saying,
the people in Nebraska were.
Hey,
just the performance against Indiana.
Hey, on his side, getting sidetracked, but I know Brian Kelly is not, he's maybe doesn't have a lot of fans for his demeanor, but man, Eric, you just made me think. I mean, talking about a professional football coach, Brian Kelly, look at that LSU team and where they are after that first week of the season and where USC is with, just talking about running a program as opposed to calling ball plays. I mean, I'm not the big, I'm not the biggest Brian Kelly fan, but that's a great job. I thought LSU was just trash after that first week. It didn't look good against South Carolina.
Yeah, I thought they were way, I was like, that's the overhyped deal. But I mean, they figured out a way offensively, which is not a surprise because that's
the win at South Carolina looks a little bit better right now than it did when it originally happened.
Yeah, no doubt. But Brian Kelly's done a good job of tweaking that offense because obviously, I mean, Jay Daniels pretty good, right? I don't know if anybody's watched the Washington Commanders. He's a pretty good football player. But to tweak and get the quarterback play and get the offensive efficiency they have going, and they've clearly made a step defensively. Now, what does that look like this week? Because that's a heavyweight fight. Mike Elko's done a really good job at A&M. Now, you knew he inherited some talent. Goes to show you what Jimbo Fisher couldn't get done with some guys down there. But that one's going to be an absolute slugfest between those two teams. And I give LSU credit. I thought they could be walking into a little bit of a hornet's nest at Arkansas coming out of that win, where they didn't have the lead in that game till overtime at the end. But to go in there and take care of business at Arkansas and not look ahead to A&M, pretty impressive maturity in that locker room, and good job by that coaching staff to have those guys ready to go. Now they get ready for a slugfest.
Yeah, LSU was my team over the offseason where I thought was severely overranked. I think it goes to
Same.
show you that Nussmeier, though he's not Jaden Daniels, pretty good quarterback, and how good. If you got a good quarterback in college football, you're going to be a pretty good team for the most part, right? And
Makes good decisions and makes
Mhm.
quick decisions, and that's
Yeah.
the whole key to playing quarterback. You just can't pat and hold the ball. You got to get it and go. And taking that back to Tennessee, I thought that's what Nico did a much better job of in the second half. It was one read, two read. If it wasn't there, all right, let me go get 4 yards, and we'll play 2nd and 6 instead of 1st and 13 on a sack.
Mhm.
Let's just go make something positive happen and play the next play. And I think that's the step that you hope Nico takes moving forward. And I think that's what LSU's getting. They don't have a lot of negative plays at LSU on offense because he's not holding that ball a ton the last few weeks, and it's showing up with their production and efficiency.
Yeah, I felt like Tennessee just lived in 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10 in the entire first half. Out the door, a guy that was here on campus and a guy that's been here a couple of times, and obviously a dual sport athlete guy, is edge player, AP, Rodney Dunham. Where is he on the board at edge? I mean, he's got to be right there at the top, right?
He is, yeah, 100%. Like Tennessee very much wants Rodney Dunham, a guy that just produces there at Myers Park, and you had a chance to watch him play back when we were there for the NC State game, and dual sport star, Tony Vitello wants the kid as a baseball guy too. I mean, that you don't see it done a whole lot, but it's maybe doable for the right sports. But Tennessee's very much in the mix, and Dunham is very much high on their board.
A lot going on right now. Tennessee may not be having a football game this weekend, but Volquest has so much going on this week. Tons of recruiting notes from this past weekend with Austin and Matt Ray. Everything you need to know on Tennessee commits. We've got things to look ahead to for the bye week. How can Tennessee's offense get better? There's a baseball scrimmage coming up on Friday. Basketball starting right now. Exhibition on Sunday. So much going on right now. Brent Hubbs over at Volquest.com and on the General's Quarters. If people are listening to this podcast, we thank you for sure, but there's so much more to this iceberg that you can't see over there on the General's Quarters.
Yeah, I mean, great conversation. Obviously, a lot of back and forth with everybody, but a lot of great content. I mean, if you're not watching Vol Club Confidential, I mean, a great one with Jacoby Thomas and some insight on kind of how he ended up at Tennessee. That's every Monday. It's content you won't find anywhere else. And just because it's an off week, that there's nothing off about the end of October in football when you're sitting there with one loss and you're in the middle of everything. So we'll be following football all day on Saturday, watching all these games and interacting with you on Saturday about that stuff. You mentioned exhibition baseball, exhibition basketball, tons of recruiting. You need to be at Volquest. You don't just need to be on the YouTube channel. You don't just need to be on our podcasting platforms. And we appreciate everybody who is. But if you're liking any of this stuff, we go so much deeper with it on the site that be sure and check us out at Volquest.com.
Big thanks as always to our presenting sponsors, Exterior Home Solutions, for being a part of the show. Local and trusted since 1999. If you have needing for roofing, siding, garage, decking, whatever the case may be, Exterior Home Solutions should be that call. A free estimate, 865-524-5888, 865-524-5888, or online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. For Brent Hubbs, Austin Price, Rob Lewis, I am Eric Kane. Thank you so much for being here on the Tuesday Volquest Podcast.